Teve uma educação profundamente religiosa. Os pais casaram segundo o princípio bíblico de que o pai é o chefe do lar.
We'd pray together, kind of thing. I mean, we'd pray before meals and we'd pray before going to bed and ask God for help and ask God for forgiveness for anything we've done wrong that day. He was very strict. I was scared of my dad for years. I was really frightened of him.
Ela e a irmã passavam horas a brincar sozinhas. O pai ensinou-lhes que as influências externas eram más. Proibia-lhes as amizades fora da organização. Todavia, a partir dos 11 anos, as suas brincadeiras de faz de conta escondiam uma dolorosa realidade. O pai começara a abusar sexualmente dela.
Dad came through and started touching me and feeling me. I just lay there, hoping it would go away. Witness statement at Salcott's police office. Over the years since I was 11 until I was 15, my dad had done things to me that he shouldn't have done, like rub my breasts, finger me and tried to have sex with me. I remember when we were in Perth, we were staying in a tent. He started to touch me and he made me touch him and he made me put his penis in my mouth, things like that.
Were you scared?
Terrified. There was one time my dad had told me if I'd ever told anyone about this, he would rip me apart.
Durante anos ela manteve o silêncio. Porém, certo domingo, depois de uma reunião no Salão do Reino, pediu para falar com os anciãos. Precisava de ajuda.
We just told them everything that happened.
Did they tell you that this was serious, that you should go to the police, that they would go to the police for you?
No, they didn't tell me anything like that. They didn't make any mention of the police.
They said they deal with it.
Mm-hmm. After that, they'd called my father in, and they had a very, very long chat with him. And then eventually he came out, and we went home, and that was the end of it.
Quando confrontado, Ian Cousins confessou abusar sexualmente da filha. Disse estar arrependido pelo que os anciãos o mandaram para casa com ela. Os abusos continuaram. Cousins recebeu uma admoestação pública por parte dos anciãos, mas a política da organização implicava que ninguém saberia porquê, nem mesmo a sua filha mais nova.
It was announced on the platform that Ian Cousins has been reproved, and after that I went to one of the elders and asked, well, why has he been reproved? And he said it's because of something he did wrong, but he wouldn't tell me what it was.
Mesmo depois da irmã sair de casa farta dos abusos, Alison continuou sem saber porquê. Tinha saudades da irmã e sentia-se sozinha. Com uma filha ausente, Ian Cousins voltou-se para a outra. Tudo começou com um inocente beijo de boas noites.
I gave him a kiss, little peck in the lips, and then I tried to get up to walk away, and he pulled me down and he forced his tongue through my teeth. My clenched teeth, and he tried to put blame on me and said, do you really think you should be doing that?
He blamed you?
Mm-hmm.
Não demorou muito até que os abusos piorassem. Certo dia, o pai foi acusado de violar uma das amigas de Alison. Ela tinha de fazer alguma coisa, mas não tinha ninguém a quem recorrer. Ninguém, a não ser o Salão do Reino. Pediu para falar com um ancião.
I told him everything that had happened and what my dad had done to me, and he said that he didn't believe me at all, and he said that I was a liar and that my dad would never do such a thing, and that my dad was such a nice man.
Tal como a irmã, Alison foi mandada para casa. O pai, o bom homem, ficou livre de continuar a abusar dela. Por isso ela apresentou um ultimato aos anciãos. Ou faziam alguma coisa, ou ela iria à polícia. Eles nada fizeram.
I have told the police about my dad because I am concerned that he has contact with other young girls through the church.
Some of these people gave good statements and very, very positive in their attitude and support of Alison and her sister. Other people felt that they didn't want to be involved and gave a negative statement, and some people refused to speak to us altogether.
Why?
I have no idea why. They just refused to speak to the police.
Were they Jehovah's Witnesses?
I believe they were.
But they wouldn't help?
They wouldn't give a statement to us, no.
Só durante as investigações policiais é que tudo se tornou claro para Alison Cousins. Só então descobriu que a irmã sofrera os mesmos abusos. Só então descobriu que 3 anos antes o pai confessara tudo aos anciãos. Contudo, ninguém a avisara a ela, a sua próxima vítima.
Nobody told me anything. They all basically kept it all under wraps and told nobody what had happened.
A única coisa que fizeram foi colocar o nome e a confissão do pai numa base de dados da organização. Uma lista onde constam os nomes de suspeitos de pedofilia e de pedófilos confessos a serem vigiados. Pedimos a Alison Cousins que nos arranjasse uma cópia do seu processo com base na Lei da Proteção de Informações. Ali, preto no branco, podia ler-se que há 3 anos que as testemunhas de Jeová sabiam que o seu pai era um pedófilo confesso. No entanto, em vez de vigiarem o seu comportamento, por 2 vezes os anciãos ignoraram as queixas da sua outra filha. Ao confessar aos anciãos, Cousins recebeu uma leve reprimenda. Ao confessar em tribunal, foi condenado a 5 anos de prisão.
I believe we were. The last I know, they had told several people before coming to the police, and these people had not reported it either to the police or the social services. We have a duty to protect, and if we are not told, we are unable to protect.
Nova York, capital dos negócios e sede oficial de uma das maiores organizações religiosas do mundo. É a partir daqui que as Testemunhas de Jeová dirigem os seus mais de 6 milhões de membros. É a partir daqui, em Brooklyn Heights, que todas as políticas e diretrizes são emitidas. Qualquer pessoa é bem-vinda e uma coisa fica clara. Nesta organização, obedece-se à palavra de Deus. Todos os meses são aqui impressas 50.000 Bíblias que serão distribuídas em todo o mundo. É também aqui que se guardam os nomes de suspeitos de pedofilia e de pedófilos confessos. Bill Bowen, um ancião respeitado durante quase 20 anos, acaba de abdicar do seu cargo. Diz que os homens que dirigem a organização estão a proteger a sua religião e não as crianças.
They do not want people to know that they have this problem. And by covering it up, they just hurt one person. By letting it out, then they hurt the image of the church.
Os anciãos devem apresentar os casos de abuso sexual ao departamento legal da organização. Só devem contactar a polícia se a lei assim o exigir. Caso contrário, têm o dever moral de a contactar na mesma, mas muitas vezes não o fazem. As coisas parecem não ir além da base de dados da organização.
Every detail is written down about what happened, where it happened, when it happened, how it happened.
You're saying the organization has its own sexual offenders register, if you like?
That's exactly right.
That it's keeping to itself and not showing others.
Exactly right. These men remain anonymous to anyone outside the organization and anyone really inside the organization unless you are personally reporting the matter.
Teria sido esta a política vigente em Stevenson que permitiu que Ann Cousins continuasse a abusar das filhas? Os anciãos recusam-se a falar connosco, pelo que tentamos falar com o homem enviado para resolver o caso.
Hello, Mr. Briggs. We're from BBC Panorama, as you know.
I know that.
We just want to ask you a few questions about the Ann Cousins case.
It's reasonable to really actually consider the brothers and sisters in the congregation that have had to undergo all this pressure. And so I would just leave it at that. That's all I have to say on the matter.
The database, Mr. Briggs. Why should the Jehovah's Witnesses keep a database of men who have confessed to being paedophiles, but the police aren't told? Do you think that's reasonable behaviour, Mr. Briggs?
O último nome acrescentado a essa lista terá sido de James Barrett. Há 3 dias de Bíblia na mão, este ancião de rugby foi considerado culpado de abusos sexuais a 2 rapazes e condenado a 2 anos de prisão. A organização já recebera essas queixas há 5 anos, mas Barrett negou tudo e foi-lhe permitido continuar como ancião. Quantos nomes constarão da base de dados? Perguntámos à sede em Nova Iorque, mas recusaram-se a dizer-nos. Disseram que o que importa não são os números. Depois de uma vida na organização, Bill Bowen tem outra versão.
How many names do you suspect are on that list?
23,720.
How do you know that?
I was contacted by sources within the church. I was given a figure of over 20,000. 2 different sources came back to me and said that number is actually more specific and gave me a figure of 23,720. They told me that they had accessed the internal database, and that figure was based on child molesters in the USA, Canada, and Europe. And that's the figure that they were given.
Mais de 20 mil nomes numa base de dados secreta. É por isso que estas pessoas pedem que a organização escute os seus membros. Com Bill Bowen apelam às Testemunhas de Jeová para que divulguem a sua lista de pedófilos. A sua campanha, Cordeiros Silenciosos, já foi contactada por 5 mil vítimas. Esta vigília é para elas.
Or is what they're doing, once it's found out, causing their own members to be deeply disturbed.
Heather Berry e a sua meia-irmã, Holly Brewer, vieram de New Hampshire. O homem que abusava delas foi preso por um período mínimo de 56 anos. Era o pai de Heather. Hoje, Heather e Holly enfrentam um novo desafio. Vão levar as Testemunhas de Jeová a tribunal.
I'm Heather from New Hampshire. I don't want to tell my story, but I've heard the word victim too many times today. And all of us are standing out here today. We're standing tall and proud and saying this happened and then it can't happen, and we're survivors. And we're fighting and we're not victims.
São as primeiras desses sobreviventes a levar a sua luta até aos tribunais. Alegam que a organização não só não fez nada quando se queixaram, como condenou e castigou a família quando esta contactou a polícia.
Very glad I came. Like I said, I would do it again. And again, and again. And as many times as it takes to get a change in the policies and things that they hide constantly.
I'm really glad that the policy was talked about so much today. That it's an actual policy. It's not just a few elders that want to hide things. It comes from higher up.
It's a worldwide policy.
Yeah.
Solicitámos uma entrevista à organização para falar sobre as alegações de que estão a colocar milhares de crianças em risco. Em vez disso, ofereceram-nos algumas cassetes de vídeo.
Here we have it. A box full of tapes, in fact. Jehovah's Witnesses response, progressive understanding of paedophilia, education through publications, and one marked policies, and I'm told that's where we should get some answers.
Nessa noite vimos as cassetes em busca de respostas. A organização confirmara-nos categoricamente que o bem-estar das crianças é para ela uma preocupação constante e que tem uma forte política que visa a sua proteção. Queríamos ver isso com mais pormenor.
We've heard the suggestion that our policies may not be adequate to cover the problem of child molestation, but that's not the case at all.
A política não poderia ser mais simples. Quem deve resolver as queixas de abusos são os anciãos.
I think that's a very good policy that the elders, essentially would take charge of the situation of reporting the abuse.
Porém, as autoridades que devem contactar não são a polícia, mas sim o seu próprio departamento legal.
The fact of the matter is, we have a very aggressive policy to handle child molestation in the congregation, and it is primarily designed to protect our children.
Na prática, será mesmo eficaz? Há pouco mais de um ano, Bill Bowen contactou o Departamento Legal em Nova Iorque perguntando como deveria resolver uma queixa de abuso sexual na sua congregação. O conselho que lhe deram tinha pouco a ver com a proteção da vítima. Disseram-lhe que falasse com o acusado.
You just ask him again, now, is there anything to this? If he says no, then I would walk away from it. Yeah. Leave it for Jehovah. He'll bring it out. Yeah. But don't get yourself in a jam.
Deixar isso com Jeová. Segundo milhares de vítimas, é essa a política de proteção de menores das Testemunhas de Jeová. Ninguém melhor do que Sarah Poisson para nos falar sobre isso. A mãe de Holly Brewer e Heather Berry sabe o quanto custou às filhas a sua lealdade para com a congregação. Paul Berry, o seu marido, batia-lhes. Ela suspeitava de que também abusava sexualmente de Heather e foi falar com os anciãos.
I could tell from their looks on their faces that I'd done a bad thing. That I had spoken against my husband, which is a bad thing. And so their solution was that I should be a better wife and I should pray more. That was their solution. That's how I could stop him from battering us. I assumed they were right. They had to be right. Because they know everything, because they're God's representatives on earth.
Não conseguiu convencê-los, mas ficou convencida de que Paul Berry andava a abusar sexualmente da filha Heather.
When I was about 3 years old, I started displaying behavior that no 3-year-old in their right mind would display. And I was throwing stools out of 2-story windows, and I was, I went to Boston Children's Medical Hospital in the psychiatric ward when I was 3 because she found me stabbing myself with a screwdriver in the arm in the kitchen. He came to me in the blackened night, hands outstretched. There was no fight. The masked man slowly became familiar with my shape, gently rubbing his hands on me, every nook, cranny, and gate. My child, you are so sweet, so perfect and right. Then I knew nothing but defeat. I tried not to think about the abuse as much as possible. I mean, like, there was the physical abuse, there was the verbal abuse, and there was the sexual abuse, and when none of it was happening, that was ideal, and that's what I tried to focus on the most.
And all the while, you were going to the Kingdom Hall every Sunday? You were going to meetings during the week?
We were going out door-to-door service.
Muitas foram as vezes em que as raparigas esperaram cá fora enquanto a mãe implorava a ajuda dos anciãos da sua congregação. Muitas foram as vezes em que a acompanharam até casa depois de ter sido aconselhada a orar mais e a ser melhor esposa. Também Holly tinha uma história a contar, uma história que nunca contara à mãe e que sabia que os anciãos não quereriam ouvir. O seu instinto dizia-lhe que contasse ao polícia que conhecia, mas depois de anos na congregação não podia fazê-lo.
Holly would actually tell me that she was very angry about things at home, and she did, on more than several occasions, tell me that someday, Sergeant Zeller, I'm going to tell you something that happened to me. And I always told Holly, when you're ready, I'll be there. You know where I am.
A mãe falou mais de 10 vezes com os anciãos, mas nunca passou pela cabeça de Sarah Poisson procurar ajuda fora da congregação.
You can say that your children's lives are in danger, and in the same breath that you couldn't possibly go to the police. How can that be?
Because God would not want that. It would never have occurred to me. And even if it had, I would not have done it. Because he's a man, a baptized male, and he's a ministerial servant, and I was a woman, and they're kids. And that's even worse than being a woman. These things need to stay in this room. I heard that many, many times. You need to pray about it more. I can show you my Bible. It's paper thin. I still have it. It's all worn out. Did a lot of praying.
After you were told them that her father was sexually abusing Heather, nothing changed?
No. No. Well, yeah, things changed. They got a lot worse for me.
Por fim, a decisão deixou de estar nas mãos dela. Na escola, todos reparavam nas nódoas negras das suas filhas. Avisaram a assistência social que lhe apresentou 2 opções. Ou deixava o marido, ou lhe levavam as filhas. Contudo, se o deixasse, sabia que a congregação a desprezaria.
At that point, I had to make a decision between God and my kids. And I knew, well, at that time I knew, that if I chose my kids, I didn't have a prayer. But I didn't care anymore. So we lost everything in one day.
Sarah Poisson vivia em função do Salão do Reino. Quando foi desassociada pela congregação, não teve outra alternativa senão mudar-se. Não perdeu apenas todos os amigos que tinha. Da noite para o dia ficou sem casa e sem dinheiro, tentando criar as duas filhas. Os amigos que tinham desprezavam-nas abertamente. Todavia, com a família agora afastada da organização, Holly acabou por contar a verdade à mãe. O padrasto também abusara dela. Quando ele tentou obter permissão para ver a irmã mais nova, Holly acabou por fazer o que os anciãos não tinham feito. Foi até à esquadra local.
It was clear to me that it was a life's crossing, a road to cross. Never any doubt in my mind that Holly could do it. It was a tremendous effort on her part. And it smacked of raw courage from beginning to end.
Quem entrou nesta esquadra era uma jovem muito mudada e desafiadora.
My earliest memory is like about 3 years old. My latest memory is 10 years old. And he gradually worked into being interested in me to full-blown sex, intercourse, over those years.
Foi muito difícil. A polícia levou Holly até à casa onde os abusos haviam começado.
He had a room that he had found in our very, very old house that was underneath the barn that you had to crawl through a hole to get to. And once you were in there, you were isolated from the entire house and from everything. And that's where everything would go down.
Would he kneel down on next to you or over you?
He'd sit anywhere, just sit and let me do whatever I was going to do. Sit
Okay.
like this.
All right.
And just and I'd lean over.
Uh-huh. And did he tell you what he wanted you to do?
I knew after a while.
Okay.
Contou à polícia exatamente o que Barry queria e todo o brutal desenrolar de abusos que sofreu ao longo da sua infância.
I had no vision of me growing up and being 16. I thought he was eventually going to kill me, you know, and then I'd be free, and that's the way I looked at it.
You're doing good. It's crazy. It's really hard to come back here, I know that.
I know.
You know?
He'd say things like, "Thank you for obeying me." And he'd thank me for obeying him and reminding me that word, the obey word. That was a big thing.
Paul Barry estava confiante de que Holly nunca iria ter com os anciãos. As Testemunhas de Jeová têm uma clara diretriz relativamente ao pecado. Só podem agir se houver 2 testemunhas ou se for feita uma confissão. Quando Holly contou a sua história aos agentes, pareceu-lhes que essa comunidade religiosa teria permitido que os abusos continuassem.
So this is the same sheet that was here before?
All the same.
All right.
Sexual abuse of children is not to be tolerated. And I don't care what their reasoning was. It was faulted reasoning. They were wrong, and as far as I'm concerned, they were criminally negligent. That's my take on it.
Even with just the child's word, with one witness, with just the mother's word, without the 2 witnesses their Bible tells them they need.
Well, unfortunately, most kids don't have several witnesses observing them get raped. It's an unfortunate part of it.
Foram precisos quase 4 anos para o caso ir a tribunal. Paul Berry enfrentava 17 acusações de agressão sexual agravada.
I was holding Holly's hand, and she had a lot of pointy rings on, and she was squeezing my hand really tightly. And it took them a long time to get through the verdict because there were so many indictments. And when it was over, my hand was all blood, and I didn't even feel it. And it was so powerful to be believed.
Mas nem toda a gente acreditou nelas, mesmo depois de Berry ter sido considerado culpado de todos os 17 pontos de acusação. Cerca de 2 dezenas de membros da sua congregação compareceram à leitura da sentença. Todos eles pareciam ter algo a dizer a favor de Paul Berry.
He had already been found guilty, and they found room in their hearts to stand in front of that child and say, we don't believe any of it. And what they were saying was they didn't believe the child, they didn't believe in the system of justice, they didn't believe the judge, they didn't believe the jury, they didn't believe anyone except themselves.
Everything they were saying was, he's such a fine worker. I've worked with him secularly, and, you know, he always shows up to work on time, and he's such a good worker. Everybody said that, and also the second half was everybody started saying, he's babysat our kids hundreds of times. I would let him babysit our kids every day. And he's such a good worker. And I was just sitting there like, he's not on trial for being a negligent worker.
I can't imagine how badly she must have felt not to have been believed by elders in her own close-knit community. What a horrible blow to a child this must have been. Shame. Shame on them.
To his sister's flat while she was away on holiday. He said we'd go in and we'd check his sister's flat, and he severely sexually abused me, basically.
What did he do?
It was quite severe, to be honest with you. It was severe. So even though to think of it, I don't. It hurts now to talk about it, to be honest with you. I've done that once already, I find it very hard to talk about that anymore, basically. He dropped me off at home. I remember going to the bathroom and scrubbing with Dettol because I felt dirty. That's what had happened.
Durante anos manteve o silêncio com medo que os anciãos não acreditassem nele. Quando por fim falou, os instintos dos seus 9 anos pareciam estar certos.
It's not so much did they believe me, did they want to believe me, They didn't want to believe me. I think they turned up at my house, They weren't open-minded, and I think they'd already made their mind up even before they got to my house,
A polícia acreditou nele e conseguiu descobrir um segundo rapaz violado por Patty. Todavia, os acontecimentos seguintes causaram alguma preocupação. Um ancião confrontou o pai da vítima, chamando mentiroso ao rapaz. O pai fez queixa à polícia, que avisou o ancião para que se mantivesse afastado das famílias da vítima, ao que ele respondeu ser ancião e ter todo o direito de investigar o caso.
It was his duty to test the evidence prior to the court case. I advised him that if that sort of behaviour continued, then if an allegation had been formally made, then I would have to investigate that particular person for offences to pervert the course of justice. And in fact, witness intimidation. The conversation did get a little bit heated towards the end, but obviously I had a duty to protect my complainants and witnesses to the case. I made sure and sent out the signal that I was prepared to protect them and take drastic steps, i.e. arresting people, if they breach that.
Em Birmingham, tal como em New Hampshire, os anciãos apoiaram o réu e não vacilaram mesmo depois de Patty ter sido considerado culpado e condenado a 5 anos de prisão. Na reunião seguinte, no Salão do Reino, os anciãos certificaram-se de que a congregação sabia da sua tomada de posição.
There's an announcement given saying as a body of elders, that's including every elder in Rubery, we feel as a body of elders, basically this man is innocent, we believe he's innocent, and the Bethel have informed us they will do everything in their power to help this man.
I then made it my duty to actually speak to the legal services team of the Bethel in London and voice my disquiet about the lack of cooperation I'd had from start to finish from this inquiry.
Sob pressão policial, os anciãos pediram desculpa e perderam o cargo de anciãos, embora não tenham deixado a congregação. O Betel de Londres recusou-se a falar sobre casos específicos. Disseram ter agido porque os anciãos haviam desrespeitado a confidencialidade das vítimas. Mas as vítimas queriam respostas. Voltámos a solicitar uma entrevista com o porta-voz da organização, Paul Gillis. Quando recusou, telefonámos, lhe dissemos estar a gravar a conversa e fizemos uma simples pergunta. Os anciãos têm indicações para apresentar os casos de abuso sexual à polícia ou não?
The elders' guideline is, if you get any single allegation of child abuse come to your attention, phone this office.
Why phone this office? Why not phone your local police station?
Well, you see, the first thing is we have to make sure for the protection of the child. That's
is it
our
the protection of the
first
child, or is it fair to ask you, isn't it the protection of the church that comes straight to mind there?
It is the protection of the child. We have a child protection policy.
O diálogo foi longo. Quando lhe perguntei se estaria disposto a responder às mesmas perguntas para a Câmara, recusou. Assim voltei para a América, para a Assembleia das Testemunhas de Jeová em Tulsa. Fora-nos dito que lá poderíamos encontrar um membro do corpo governante. Theodore Jaracz é um dos responsáveis pela política de proteção de menores da organização. Há mais de 2 meses que andamos a pedir-lhe uma entrevista. Só queremos respostas para perguntas muito simples. Porque mantêm em segredo a sua base de dados de suspeitos de pedofilia. Porque não apresentam todas as queixas de abusos sexuais à polícia. Porque mandam as crianças de volta para os braços dos seus agressores. Todos se recusaram a falar connosco, mas agora era a nossa oportunidade.
Tell me about the database. How do you justify keeping a list of people, men in some cases, who have confessed to paedophilia, but you have not reported them to the authority? What justification is there for you to keep that list?
You have a privacy law. You have a directive from the European Union. You observe that, don't you?
So when allegations of abuse are made, it's all right to keep them private?
I think you were answered. That question was answered to your satisfaction.
Can you answer it now?
I'm not going to repeat. I'll just tell you exactly that you can go and you see it in writing. It's all open. You know, the Bible says, do not go beyond the things that are written. We don't go beyond the things that are written.
E é só.
Let's move this way, please.
Não há dúvidas nem questões, apenas a profunda convicção de que Jeová resolverá tudo. Uma convicção cujo preço poderá continuar a ser pago por gente mais jovem e vulnerável.
They're living in denial. Denial of what's happening to their children, and it's not a matter, you see, if they accept that, then they accept that there is a problem. So rather than admit that there's a problem, they will just let children go on and continue to be molested and not do anything about it.